The year is 476 AD. Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, sits upon a crumbling throne. The empire, once a beacon of civilization, had decayed from within, plagued by corruption, stretched legions, and economic collapse. The deposition of Romulus Augustulus by the Germanic general Odoacer marked the quiet end of the Western Roman Empire. The fall of Rome sent shockwaves across the known world, leading to profound uncertainty and upheaval. Urban populations dwindled, trade networks broke down, and the world fractured into competing kingdoms. Germanic tribes established their own kingdoms, bringing new customs, laws, and languages, shifting power to regional lords. The term Dark Ages evokes images of barbarism and ignorance but is a gross oversimplification. Knowledge survived in scattered monasteries where monks preserved ancient texts. The church played a critical role in maintaining intellectual continuity, serving as a unifying force in a fragmented world. While Western Europe grappled with Rome's fall, the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Golden Age flourished. The fusion of Roman, Germanic, and Christian traditions gave rise to new forms of art, architecture, and literature. The period was dynamic, marked by adaptation and innovation, laying the foundations for a new Europe. From the ashes of Roman rule, new kingdoms arose, like the Franks in Gaul and the Visigoths in Spain. These kingdoms adopted elements of Roman law and administration, ensuring cultural continuity. Christianity emerged as the dominant religion, with the church providing unity and stability. The church emerged as a powerful force, filling the void left by Rome's fall. Monasteries became centers of learning and piety, preserving ancient texts and cultivating the arts. Missionaries spread the Christian message, converting kings and commoners alike, shaping European history. The Carolingian dynasty, under Charlemagne, revived learning and culture in Western Europe. Charlemagne established schools and invited scholars, leading to the Carolingian Renaissance. This period marked a renewed interest in classical learning and laid the foundation for future cultural achievements. The Vikings, skilled seafarers and fierce warriors, emerged as a new threat in the 9th century. They raided coastal settlements and monasteries but also established settlements and traded widely. The Viking Age was a period of cultural exchange, technological innovation, and expansion. Feudalism, a new social order based on landholding, loyalty, and military service, emerged in Western Europe. Kings granted land to nobles in exchange for loyalty and military support, creating a chain of vassalage. Peasants worked the land, providing food and labor in exchange for protection, shaping medieval Europe's landscape. The term Dark Ages is a misnomer, suggesting intellectual stagnation and ignorance. The fall of Rome was a gradual process, with many elements of Roman civilization persisting. The early Middle Ages were a period of resilience, adaptation, and the emergence of new social structures and cultural expressions. The Church played a pivotal role in preserving and transmitting knowledge during the so-called Dark Ages. Monasteries became sanctuaries of learning, where monks meticulously copied ancient texts. The Church's network of monasteries and cathedral schools kept the flame of learning alive, laying the groundwork for future advancements. The fall of the Western Roman Empire did not result in the complete obliteration of Roman knowledge and culture. While some aspects of Roman civilization undoubtedly declined or were transformed, much of its legacy endured, often finding new life in the emerging kingdoms of medieval Europe. Latin, the language of Roman administration, law, and literature, continued to be used in official documents, legal proceedings, and religious services, ensuring its survival as a language of scholarship and cultural transmission. Roman law, renowned for its sophistication and comprehensiveness, continued to influence legal practices in many parts of Europe. The Germanic tribes that established kingdoms on former Roman territory often incorporated elements of Roman law into their own legal systems, recognizing its value in maintaining order and resolving disputes. Roman architectural techniques and engineering feats, evident in the enduring structures like aqueducts, roads, and fortifications, served as models for medieval builders. While many grand Roman villas and public buildings fell into disrepair, the knowledge and skills required to construct such edifices were not entirely lost. Medieval masons and architects, drawing inspiration from Roman ruins and surviving texts, adapted Roman techniques to create new architectural styles, blending classical influences with their own artistic sensibilities. The survival of Roman knowledge was not a passive process of preservation. It was an active process of adaptation, selection, and integration, as medieval societies sought to make sense of their own world through the lens of the past, shaping their own identities while drawing upon the legacy of their predecessors. The transmission of knowledge during the early Middle Ages was a multifaceted process, relying on a combination of written texts, oral tradition, and practical experience. Monasteries, as discussed earlier, played a vital role in preserving and copying manuscripts, ensuring the survival of a vast body of knowledge that encompassed theology, philosophy, history, and science. However, the reach of written texts was limited by the relatively low levels of literacy during this period. Oral tradition, therefore, remained a vital channel for transmitting knowledge, skills, and stories across generations. Bards and storytellers traveled from village to village, entertaining and educating audiences with tales of heroic deeds, ancient myths, and historical events. Their songs and stories, passed down through generations, preserved cultural memory and transmitted valuable information about the past. Practical knowledge, essential for survival and economic activity, was often passed down within families and communities through apprenticeships and observation. Master craftsmen trained apprentices in their trades, imparting the skills and techniques needed for professions such as blacksmithing, carpentry, weaving, and farming. This hands-on approach to learning ensured the continuity of essential skills and contributed to the economic and technological advancements of the period. The transmission of knowledge in the early Middle Ages, while often informal and reliant on personal connections, proved remarkably resilient, adapting to the challenges of the era and ensuring the survival of essential skills, ideas, and cultural traditions. While the Renaissance, traditionally associated with the 14th to 17th centuries, is often seen as a distinct break from the medieval period, its roots can be traced back to the intellectual and cultural developments of the early Middle Ages. The seeds of the Renaissance, though often hidden beneath the surface of political upheaval and social change, were sown during this era of perceived darkness. The Carolingian Renaissance, initiated by Charlemagne in the 8th and 9th centuries, marked a conscious effort to revive learning and culture, promoting literacy, standardizing Latin, and encouraging the copying and distribution of classical and Christian texts. This revival, while short-lived, had a lasting impact, laying the groundwork for future intellectual growth. The increasing contact between Europe and the Islamic world, particularly through trade and the Crusades, exposed European scholars to the scientific and philosophical advancements of Islamic civilization. The translation of Arabic texts into Latin during the 12th and 13th centuries introduced Europe to new ideas in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, stimulating intellectual curiosity and challenging existing assumptions. The rise of universities in the 12th and 13th centuries, initially centered on subjects like law, medicine, and theology, further fostered intellectual inquiry and debate. These institutions, attracting scholars from across Europe, became hubs of scholarship, challenging traditional ways of thinking and paving the way for the more humanist and scientific approaches that would characterize the Renaissance. The early Middle Ages, far from being a period of stagnant darkness, witnessed crucial developments that set the stage for the Renaissance. The preservation of knowledge, the transmission of skills, the emergence of new ideas, and the growing thirst for learning all contributed to the intellectual ferment that would eventually blossom into one of the most transformative periods in European history. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled under the weight of its own internal strife and external pressures, a beacon of civilization continued to shine brightly in the east, the Byzantine Empire. Centered in the ancient city of Constantinople, strategically positioned at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, the Byzantine Empire stood as a bulwark against the tide of change sweeping across the West, a testament to the enduring legacy of Roman governance, law, and culture. While the Western Roman Empire succumbed to the pressures of barbarian invasions and internal decay, the Byzantine Empire not only survived but flourished, its emperors ruling from Constantinople for over 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. The Byzantine Empire, though often viewed through the lens of its Western counterpart, was a distinct entity, a vibrant fusion of Roman and Greek traditions. Its emperors, claiming lineage from the Roman Caesars, ruled over a multi-ethnic and multicultural empire stretching from the Balkans to Egypt, from North Africa to the Caucasus. They maintained a complex administrative system, a sophisticated legal code, and a powerful army, all modeled on Roman precedents but adapted to the unique challenges and opportunities of their time. The Byzantine Empire was not merely a pale imitation of its Western predecessor, it was a dynamic and evolving civilization, forging its own identity, while preserving and transforming elements of the classical past. Greek language and culture flourished alongside Roman law and administration. Christianity, embraced by Emperor Constantine in the 4th century, became the state religion, shaping Byzantine art, architecture, and spirituality. The Byzantine Empire, standing at the crossroads of East and West, played a pivotal role in shaping the course of medieval history. It served as a bulwark against the expansion of Islam, preserving the Christian faith in Eastern Europe. It maintained trade routes connecting East and West, facilitating cultural exchange and economic activity, and it served as a repository of ancient knowledge, its scholars and libraries safeguarding the wisdom of Greece and Rome for future generations. At the heart of the Byzantine Empire lay Constantinople, a city of unparalleled splendor and sophistication. Founded by Emperor Constantine in 324 AD on the site of the ancient Greek city of Byzantium, Constantinople quickly rose to prominence, becoming the empire's capital and a center of trade, culture, and learning that rivaled, and in many ways surpassed, Rome itself. Strategically located on the Bosporus Strait, the narrow waterway connecting the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara, Constantinople controlled a vital trade route between Europe and Asia. Ships laden with silks, spices, and treasures from the east flowed into its bustling harbor, while goods from the west, timber, furs, and slaves, made their way eastward. This constant flow of commerce brought immense wealth to Constantinople, transforming it into a cosmopolitan metropolis, a melting pot of cultures where merchants, diplomats, scholars, and adventurers from all corners of the known world mingled in its bustling streets and vibrant marketplaces. The city's wealth was evident in its grand architecture, its impressive fortifications, and its luxurious palaces. The Hippodrome, a vast chariot racing arena, could hold over 100,000 spectators, its roar echoing through the city during the excitement of the races. The Great Palace, the sprawling residence of the Byzantine emperors, housed opulent apartments, magnificent throne rooms, and lush gardens adorned with fountains and sculptures. But it was the Hagia Sophia, the Church of Holy Wisdom, that truly captured the spirit of Constantinople. Completed in 537 AD during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, the Hagia Sophia was an architectural marvel, its massive dome seeming to float effortlessly above the city, a testament to the ingenuity of Byzantine engineers and the piety of its emperors. Its interior, adorned with shimmering mosaics, glittering gold, and intricate marble work, inspired awe and wonder in all who entered, a symbol of the empire's wealth, power, and spiritual aspirations. While Western Europe grappled with the political fragmentation and economic upheaval that followed the fall of Rome, the Byzantine Empire emerged as a sanctuary for classical learning, its scholars playing a vital role in preserving and transmitting the intellectual legacy of Greece and Rome. Unlike their Western counterparts, who often lacked access to complete texts and faced the challenges of a fragmented and evolving Latin language, Byzantine scholars benefited from the continuity of Greek language and culture, allowing them to engage directly with the works of Homer, Plato, Aristotle, Euclid, and other luminaries of the classical world. Byzantine emperors, recognizing the importance of education and scholarship, supported institutions like the Imperial University of Constantinople, established in the 5th century, and the Patriarchal School, affiliated with the Church. These institutions, attracting some of the brightest minds of the empire, became centers of intellectual ferment, where ancient texts were studied, copied, and commented upon, ensuring their survival for future generations. Byzantine scholars, however, did not merely preserve the past, they also sought to synthesize it with their own Christian worldview. They engaged in theological debates, grappling with complex questions about the nature of God, the relationship between faith and reason, and the role of the Church in society. They produced commentaries on Scripture, blending classical philosophy with Christian doctrine, and they wrote histories, chronicles, and treatises that shaped Byzantine identity and provided a unique perspective on the events of their time. The intellectual tradition of the Byzantine Empire, though often overshadowed by the later achievements of the Renaissance, was a vital link in the chain of knowledge transmission that connected the ancient world to the modern era. Byzantine scholars, through their tireless efforts to preserve, study, and transmit the wisdom of the past, laid the groundwork for the intellectual flourishing that would sweep across Western Europe centuries later, igniting the Renaissance and shaping the course of Western thought. While the Byzantine Empire and Western Europe followed distinct historical trajectories during the Middle Ages, they were not isolated entities, separated by an impenetrable cultural divide. On the contrary, interactions between East and West, though often marked by conflict and competition, also facilitated the exchange of ideas, technologies, and artistic motifs, enriching both cultures and contributing to the dynamism of the medieval world. Byzantine influence on the West, though often subtle and indirect, was nevertheless profound, shaping everything from religious practices and artistic styles to scientific knowledge and philosophical thought. One of the primary conduits for Byzantine influence was trade. Constantinople, strategically positioned on the Bosporus Strait, served as a vital entrepot, a hub of commerce connecting East and West. Luxury goods from the East, silks, spices, ivory, and precious stones, flowed into Constantinople, where they were traded for Western goods, timber, furs, slaves, and manufactured goods. This constant flow of commerce brought with it not only material goods but also ideas, technologies, and artistic motifs. Byzantine textiles, renowned for their intricate designs and vibrant colors, influenced Western fashion. Byzantine architectural styles, characterized by soaring domes, intricate mosaics, and the use of marble and other luxurious materials, inspired Western builders. And Byzantine religious practices, particularly the veneration of icons, sacred images believed to possess spiritual power, found their way into Western Christianity. The transmission of knowledge was not limited to the realm of material culture. Byzantine scholars and texts also made their way westward, particularly following the capture of Constantinople by Western Crusaders in 1204. This event, though a low point in Byzantine history, led to an influx of Byzantine scholars and manuscripts into Western Europe, where they sparked renewed interest in Greek language, literature, and philosophy. The translation of Greek texts into Latin, facilitated by scholars like William of Moerbeke in the 13th century, opened up a treasure trove of knowledge to Western scholars, introducing them to the works of Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, Ptolemy, and Galen, among others. These texts, long studied and debated in Byzantine intellectual circles, had a profound impact on Western thought, challenging existing assumptions, stimulating new lines of inquiry, and laying the groundwork for the scientific and philosophical revolutions of the Renaissance. The Byzantine Empire, often relegated to the footnotes of history, played a pivotal role in bridging the ancient world to the modern era, serving as a conduit for the transmission of classical knowledge, cultural achievements, and philosophical ideas that would later fuel the Renaissance in Western Europe. While Western Europe grappled with the political fragmentation and intellectual upheaval that followed the fall of Rome, The Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, kept the flame of learning alive, preserving and transmitting the legacy of Greece and Rome for over 1,000 years. Byzantine scholars, working in the tradition of classical scholarship, diligently copied, studied, and commented upon the works of ancient philosophers, mathematicians, scientists, and historians. They preserved texts that might otherwise have been lost, ensuring that the wisdom of antiquity would not be extinguished. They debated philosophical and theological questions, engaging with the ideas of Plato, Aristotle, and other thinkers, shaping their own intellectual traditions while remaining in dialogue with the past. And they transmitted this knowledge to the West through various channels: trade, diplomacy, and the migration of scholars, particularly following the capture of Constantinople by Western Crusaders in 1204. The impact of this transmission of knowledge on the West was profound. The rediscovery of classical texts, particularly the works of Aristotle, revolutionized Western philosophy, challenging existing theological and scientific assumptions, and paving the way for the development of new approaches to understanding the world. The study of Greek language and literature, long neglected in the West, experienced a resurgence, influencing Western art, literature, and thought. And the Byzantine Empire's own artistic achievements, its stunning mosaics, its intricate iconography, its architectural innovations, provided inspiration for Western artists and architects, contributing to the development of new styles and techniques. The Byzantine Empire, though often viewed as a static and declining civilization, played a dynamic and essential role in shaping the course of Western history. It served as a bridge between the ancient world and the Renaissance, a conduit for the transmission of knowledge, ideas, and artistic traditions that would transform Western civilization and lay the groundwork for the modern world. As Western Europe emerged from the shadow of the Roman Empire's fall, a new force was shaping the world: Islam. Born in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century AD, Islam, meaning submission to the will of God, spread with remarkable speed and transformative power, uniting diverse tribes and empires under the banner of a single faith. Within a century of its founding by the Prophet Muhammad, Islam had spread from the Atlantic shores of North Africa to the borders of India, encompassing vast territories and diverse populations within its embrace. This rapid expansion was fueled not only by military conquest, but also by the compelling message of Islam, a message of monotheism, social justice, and submission to the will of Allah, God. The Quran, the holy book of Islam, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, provided a comprehensive guide for living, emphasizing prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage as pillars of faith. Islam's emphasis on equality, regardless of race or social status, resonated with many, particularly those who felt marginalized within existing social structures. The Islamic world, far from being a monolithic entity, was characterized by its diversity and dynamism. From the deserts of Arabia to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, from the bustling cities of North Africa to the ancient centers of learning in Persia, Islamic civilization embraced a rich tapestry of cultures, languages, and intellectual traditions. This cultural fusion, far from diluting the essence of Islam, enriched it, creating a vibrant and cosmopolitan civilization that would make significant contributions to art, architecture, science, philosophy, and literature. The rise of Islam had a profound impact on the course of world history. It reshaped political boundaries, established new trade routes connecting East and West, and ushered in an era of intellectual and cultural flourishing that would leave an enduring legacy on both the Islamic world and the West. The Islamic Golden Age, spanning roughly from the 8th to the 13th centuries, witnessed an explosion of knowledge, innovation, and artistic creativity, challenging existing paradigms and expanding the frontiers of human understanding. At the heart of the Islamic Golden Age stood Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, a city that epitomized the intellectual and cultural vibrancy of the Islamic world. Founded in the 8th century AD on the banks of the Tigris River, Baghdad quickly rose to prominence, becoming a center of trade, scholarship, and artistic patronage that rivaled and in many ways surpassed the great cities of antiquity. Its streets, bustling with merchants, scholars, and travelers from all corners of the Islamic world and beyond, echoed with the sounds of diverse languages, the clatter of workshops, and the lively debates of philosophers and theologians. Under the patronage of enlightened caliphs like Harun al-Rashid and his son, al-Mamun, Baghdad witnessed an unprecedented flourishing of knowledge and culture. Recognizing the transformative power of education, al-Mamun established the House of Wisdom, a renowned institution that attracted some of the brightest minds of the Islamic world. Within its walls, scholars from diverse backgrounds, Muslims, Christians, Jews, Persians, Indians, collaborated, translating ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic, preserving the wisdom of the past while making it accessible to a wider audience. The House of Wisdom was not merely a repository of ancient knowledge, it was a vibrant center of intellectual inquiry, where scholars engaged in original research, pushing the boundaries of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and other disciplines. The House of Wisdom became a model for other centers of learning that emerged throughout the Islamic world, from Cordoba in Spain to Cairo in Egypt, to Samarkand in Central Asia. These institutions, connected by a shared intellectual tradition and a common language of scholarship, Arabic, formed a vast network of knowledge production and dissemination, fostering an intellectual climate that encouraged innovation, debate, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. The Islamic Golden Age witnessed a remarkable flowering of scientific inquiry, building upon the foundations laid by ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian civilizations, while making groundbreaking discoveries that would transform our understanding of the natural world. Islamic scholars, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a belief that the study of nature was a form of worship, made significant contributions to fields ranging from astronomy and mathematics to optics and chemistry. In astronomy, Islamic scholars built upon the work of Ptolemy, refining his geocentric model of the universe while making precise observations of the stars and planets. They developed sophisticated astronomical instruments, such as the astrolabe and the quadrant, which enabled them to measure the positions of celestial bodies with unprecedented accuracy. These instruments, adopted and refined by European scholars centuries later, played a crucial role in the development of navigation and astronomy in the West. Islamic mathematicians made equally significant contributions, developing algebra as a distinct branch of mathematics, introducing the concept of zero, and refining the decimal system, all of which had a profound impact on the development of mathematics in both the East and the West. The word algebra itself derives from the Arabic al-Jabr, a term used by the 9th century Persian mathematician al-Khwarizmi in his influential treatise on the subject. Al-Khwarizmi's work, along with the contributions of other Islamic mathematicians, laid the foundation for advances in fields ranging from engineering and architecture to physics and computer science. Islamic medicine, flourishing during the Golden Age, represented a synthesis of ancient medical traditions, empirical observation, and innovative practices, resulting in significant advancements in the understanding and treatment of disease. Islamic physicians, drawing upon the works of Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen, as well as Indian and Persian medical texts, developed a sophisticated system of medicine that emphasized the interconnectedness of the body's systems, the importance of hygiene and diet, and the use of both natural remedies and surgical interventions. Hospitals known as Bimaristans emerged in major cities throughout the Islamic world, offering free medical care to people of all faiths and social backgrounds. These hospitals, often staffed by skilled physicians and surgeons, provided specialized treatment for a wide range of ailments, from eye diseases and infectious diseases to fractures and wounds. Islamic physicians made significant contributions to the understanding of anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology. They conducted dissections, albeit on animals rather than humans, to gain a better understanding of the body's internal workings. They experimented with new drugs and therapies, developing sophisticated methods for preparing medicines from plants, minerals, and other natural substances. One of the most renowned figures in Islamic medicine was Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, a Persian polymath whose medical encyclopedia, the Canon of Medicine, became a standard textbook in European medical schools for centuries. Ibn Sina's work, along with the contributions of other Islamic physicians, helped to elevate medicine from a collection of empirical observations to a more systematic and scientific discipline. The Islamic Golden Age, while geographically distant from Western Europe, exerted a profound and lasting influence on the West, transmitting knowledge, ideas and technologies that would contribute to the intellectual and cultural transformation of Europe during the Renaissance and beyond. The channels of this transmission were diverse, ranging from trade and diplomacy to the Reconquista, the Christian reconquest of Spain from Muslim rule, which exposed Europeans to the cultural and intellectual achievements of Islamic civilization. Islamic Spain, in particular, served as a bridge between the Islamic world and Western Europe. Cities like Cordoba and Toledo became centers of learning, where Muslim, Christian, and Jewish scholars collaborated, translating Arabic texts into Latin, making the knowledge of the Islamic world accessible to a wider European audience. These translations, covering subjects ranging from philosophy and mathematics to astronomy and medicine, introduced Europeans to new ideas, challenging existing assumptions and stimulating intellectual curiosity. The impact of this knowledge transfer is evident in the works of European scholars like Albertus Magnus, Roger Bacon, and Leonardo da Vinci, all of whom drew upon Islamic sources in their own scientific and philosophical inquiries. The Islamic world's influence on the West, however, extended beyond the realm of intellectual pursuits. Islamic art and architecture, with their intricate geometric patterns, their use of calligraphy as a decorative element, and their emphasis on light and space, influenced European artistic styles, particularly during the Gothic and Renaissance periods. Islamic innovations in agriculture, such as new irrigation techniques, and the introduction of crops like sugarcane, rice, and citrus fruits, transformed European agriculture, contributing to population growth and economic development. Even everyday objects like coffee, chess, and the astrolabe, adopted from the Islamic world, became integral parts of European culture. The Islamic Golden Age, though often overlooked in traditional accounts of Western history, played a pivotal role in shaping the course of Western civilization. Its legacy of innovation, its emphasis on knowledge and reason, and its spirit of cultural exchange left an enduring mark on the West, paving the way for the Renaissance and the scientific revolution that would transform Europe and the world. In the mid-14th century, as Europe experienced a period of relative prosperity and growth, a dark cloud gathered on the horizon, a silent and invisible threat that would soon engulf the continent in a wave of death and despair: the Black Death. This devastating pandemic, one of the deadliest in human history, swept across Europe with terrifying speed, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Originating in Central Asia, the bubonic plague, carried by fleas that infested rodents, traveled along trade routes, silently making its way westward, an unwelcome passenger on ships laden with goods and spices from the east. In 1347, the plague reached the shores of Sicily, carried by merchant ships from the Black Sea. Within months, it had spread to mainland Italy, then to France, Spain, England, and beyond, its tendrils reaching into every corner of the continent. The speed and ferocity of the plague's spread were staggering. Cities, once vibrant centers of commerce and culture, transformed into ghost towns, their streets littered with the bodies of the dead and dying. Villages, seemingly isolated from the contagion, found themselves decimated, their populations dwindling as the plague relentlessly claimed its victims. The Black Death did not discriminate. It struck rich and poor alike, nobles and peasants, clergy and laity, leaving no segment of society untouched by its horror. The plague's arrival in a community was an event of unimaginable terror, its presence heralded by the sudden deaths of neighbors, the stench of decay permeating the air, the cries of the afflicted echoing through the streets. The Black Death was more than just a medical disaster. It was a societal catastrophe, shaking the foundations of medieval Europe, challenging its institutions, and transforming its social fabric. The world, once familiar and seemingly ordered, had been plunged into chaos and uncertainty. The bubonic plague, the most common form of the Black Death, manifested with terrifying symptoms that left its victims writhing in agony. Infected individuals would experience fever, chills, headache, and weakness, followed by the appearance of painful swollen lymph nodes known as buboes in the groin, armpits, and neck. These buboes, filled with pus and blood, would turn black, giving the plague its grim moniker. Death, often within days of the onset of symptoms, was excruciating, a combination of organ failure, internal bleeding, and overwhelming sepsis. The plague's impact, however, extended far beyond the physical suffering of its victims. As the death toll mounted, social order began to unravel. Fear, panic, and despair gripped communities, leading to a breakdown of social norms and a surge in violence, superstition, and scapegoating. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by ignorance and fear. Some believed the plague was a divine punishment for humanity's sins, a sign of God's wrath upon a wicked world. Others blamed outsiders, Jews, foreigners, travelers, accusing them of poisoning wells or spreading the disease through sorcery. Still others sought explanations in the movements of the stars, interpreting comets and eclipses as harbingers of doom. The plague's impact on religious life was profound. Churches, once sanctuaries of hope and solace, stood empty, their priests either dead or too afraid to minister to the sick and dying. People questioned their faith, wondering why God would allow such suffering to befall them. Some, desperate for salvation, turned to extreme forms of piety, flagellating themselves in public as penance for their sins. Others, disillusioned and despairing, abandoned their faith altogether, seeking solace in earthly pleasures, or retreating into a nihilistic acceptance of their fate. The Black Death, with its devastating impact on European society, shook the foundations of medieval thought and belief. The Church, long the dominant force in European life, found its authority challenged as people grappled with the plague's horrors and sought explanations for the seemingly random and merciless nature of the disease. The Church's traditional responses to suffering, prayer, penance, and acts of charity seemed woefully inadequate in the face of such widespread death and despair. People questioned God's justice, wondering why a loving God would allow such suffering to befall humanity. Some, clinging to their faith, interpreted the plague as a divine test, a trial of their devotion and a call to repentance. They sought solace in prayer, fasting, and pilgrimages, hoping to appease God's wrath and avert further suffering. Others, however, found their faith shaken to its core. The sight of priests succumbing to the plague, the seeming randomness of its victims, and the failure of traditional remedies led some to question the Church's teachings and authority. Heretical movements long suppressed by the Church gained new adherents, offering alternative explanations for the plague and promising salvation outside the established religious order. The plague, in its wake, left a spiritual vacuum, a crisis of faith that would have lasting consequences for the Church and its role in European society. The Black Death, while a time of profound suffering, also sparked intellectual and spiritual ferment. Scholars and theologians grappled with the plague's implications, seeking to reconcile its horrors with their understanding of God's plan. Some, like the French bishop Jean de Venette, saw the plague as a sign of the apocalypse, a harbinger of the end times. Others, like the Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio, used the plague as a backdrop for exploring human nature, highlighting both the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. The Black Death, while an unmitigated tragedy that decimated Europe's population and left an enduring scar on its psyche, also had unintended consequences that would profoundly shape the course of European history. The massive loss of life, while initially plunging Europe into economic chaos, ultimately led to a labor shortage that empowered the peasantry and weakened the grip of feudalism. With fewer workers available, landlords were forced to compete for labor, offering higher wages and better conditions to attract and retain tenants. Peasants, once bound to the land by tradition and obligation, gained leverage, demanding greater freedoms and challenging the authority of their lords. This shift in the balance of power, accelerated by the Black Death, contributed to the decline of feudalism and the rise of a more market-oriented economy. The plague also had a profound impact on intellectual and artistic expression. The experience of widespread death and the questioning of traditional authority fostered a new spirit of inquiry, a willingness to challenge established norms, and explore alternative ways of understanding the world. This intellectual ferment laid the groundwork for the Renaissance, a period of unprecedented artistic, scientific, and cultural flourishing that would transform Europe. The Black Death, while a dark chapter in human history, ultimately served as a catalyst for change, accelerating social, economic, and intellectual transformations that would shape the course of European history. Its legacy, though forever intertwined with death and despair, is also one of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring capacity of the human spirit to find hope and meaning even in the face of unimaginable adversity. As Europe emerged from the calamities of the Black Death, a new era was dawning, an era marked by a renewed interest in classical learning, a spirit of artistic and scientific inquiry, and a growing emphasis on human potential and achievement. The Renaissance, a term derived from the French word for rebirth, represented a profound shift in European thought and culture, a departure from the perceived intellectual stagnation of the Middle Ages, and a rediscovery of the artistic, literary, and philosophical treasures of ancient Greece and Rome. While the Renaissance is often associated with the 14th and 15th centuries in Italy, its roots can be traced back to the intellectual ferment and social transformations that unfolded during the so-called Dark Ages. The preservation of classical knowledge by Byzantine and Islamic scholars, the rise of universities, the growth of cities, and the increasing availability of books due to the invention of the printing press, all contributed to creating an intellectual climate ripe for change. The Renaissance was not merely a revival of the past, it was a transformative period that reshaped European civilization, laying the groundwork for the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and the modern world. It was an era of intellectual giants like Leonardo da Vinci, whose insatiable curiosity and artistic genius embodied the Renaissance ideal of the Renaissance man, Michelangelo, whose sculptures and paintings adorned the Sistine Chapel and redefined the possibilities of art, and Galileo Galilei, whose astronomical observations and scientific inquiries challenged established dogma and ushered in a new era of scientific discovery. The term Dark Ages, while a misnomer that fails to capture the complexities and achievements of the early Middle Ages, nevertheless reflects a historical reality, a period of profound challenges and transformations that shaped the course of European history. The fall of the Western Roman Empire, the rise of new kingdoms, the spread of Christianity, the Viking invasions, the emergence of feudalism, the Black Death, these events and processes, often violent and disruptive, tested the resilience of European civilization, forcing it to adapt, innovate, and forge new paths. The legacy of the Dark Ages is multifaceted and enduring. It was a period that witnessed the fusion of Roman, Germanic, and Christian traditions, giving rise to new forms of art, architecture, literature, and law. It was a time of technological innovation, as evidenced by the development of new agricultural techniques, the construction of impressive castles and cathedrals, and the mastery of shipbuilding and navigation. It was an era that saw the rise of powerful institutions like the Church, which, while often criticized for its rigidity and intolerance, also played a vital role in preserving knowledge, fostering education, and providing spiritual guidance in a time of uncertainty. And it was a period that laid the groundwork for the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the rise of the modern West, demonstrating the enduring capacity of human civilization to adapt, innovate, and emerge from periods of darkness stronger and more resilient. The story of the Dark Ages is not a self-contained narrative, neatly bounded by the fall of Rome and the dawn of the Renaissance. It is part of a larger historical tapestry, woven with threads of continuity and change, progress and regress, that connect the ancient world to the present day. The achievements of the Roman Empire, though partially obscured by its fall, continued to influence European civilization for centuries, providing models of governance, law, engineering, and artistic expression. The intellectual and cultural contributions of the Byzantine and Islamic worlds, often overlooked in traditional accounts of Western history, played a pivotal role in transmitting knowledge, stimulating intellectual curiosity, and challenging existing paradigms. The Dark Ages, far from being a historical aberration, were a crucible in which European civilization was forged, tested, and transformed. They were a time of both darkness and light, of both destruction and creation, of both despair and hope. By exploring this complex and often misunderstood period, we gain a deeper appreciation for the roots of our own civilization, the enduring power of ideas, and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. The story of the Dark Ages is ultimately a story about us, our capacity for both greatness and folly, our ability to learn from the past and shape the future. It is a story that continues to resonate today, reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the flame of human ingenuity and the spirit of progress can never be extinguished.